I collaborated on this presentation, and it's written in the style of Dr. Seuss. And since it is written in the style of Dr. Seuss, it kind of harkens back to our time in the classroom. And I thought it might be fun to rotate around the microphone and let each person read their one slide, and then we can talk about it. How does everybody feel about that? See, it's early, and I'm going to make you show that you're awake. So I think I'm doing this right. There we go. So do you want to start? Sure. All right. So introduce yourself and then read your slide.
Kara Schuckman from the World Affairs Council of Dallas-Fort Worth. This slide is set it up, put an emphasis on the parts valued the most, and don't feel shy to take some credit and boast.
Okay, so basically what this is talking about is there's usually a situation assessment or a summary for each of the award entries that you do, about a paragraph. Sometimes you'll see like a 100-word count or whatever. This is where you have a chance to kind of summarize your program in a very short way, and you really need to brag. I do see sometimes when I'm doing award judging that a lot of people will write very passively and not really take credit for their work. This is not the time to do that. This is where you brag about it. This is where you talk about what you did and what the results were in a very concise way and make it sound like the best program ever, because that's the way you win awards. You want to do the next one?
I'm Samantha Pruser from DHT Films. Tell a story, tell us your story, and why it's grade A, but heaven forbid, don't get carried away.
This is writing with purpose, basically. We're in a storytelling business, and I can tell you from judging a lot of these awards, when you've looked through about 50 different awards and you're trying to pick the one that is better than all the rest, a lot of times the story is really what makes it stand out. So you should be writing for your judging audience just like you're writing for a consumer audience. What's going to make it interesting to us? What's going to make it compelling enough for us to remember it, so that when we then have our little scrum at the end and talk about the award entries that we all preferred, we will find common ground based on the story that you told. Pretty straightforward. But don't get carried away. I don't want too much story, because we've got to read 50 of these things, and shorter is always better. All right.
When citing your research, key insights are fine. Sometimes a whole book's not as good as a line.
So a lot of times, how many people get a big budget for research at the beginning of campaigns? Anyone? Yeah, it just doesn't happen. So the research is always interesting, because I tell people, what did you actually think about? What did you Google? What did you ask questions about to help you come to the strategy that you're using? To me, that is the research, and that's what you should be including in there. So it might be that you read some stories online and you learned that there was a huge opportunity that was going missed, that you can take advantage of, and that's what this program that you're proposing is addressing. So it doesn't have to be a giant focus group or a survey of 2,000 people or anything like that. If you've done some secondary research where you've looked online and gathered information, that's your research. But something has to be in there to show the rationale for the program, even if it's just knowledge that you have inherently. Go see if you can find a place to validate that, and then include it in your summary. Remember to introduce yourself.
David Atkins, I'm with the Barbershop Marketing. Have a point. Be sure that your data, no matter how small, says something important, not nothing at all.
Okay, so one thing that we do see with research that hurts your entry is if the research doesn't actually connect to the program idea. Sometimes the research will tell why we're trying to sell a product, or the research will explain why a reputation is suffering, but then it doesn't validate why you chose the course of action that you took. So the point has to connect to your program, not just to the industry or not just to the problem that you're trying to solve, but why did you pick that specific approach to address your problem. That's what the research has to tell us. So make sure it's connected to your campaign. Does that make sense? All right. So now we're going to talk about the objectives section. Introduce yourself, and then you get to read.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie Hicks. The business goal, there was a problem you came here to solve. Please tell us why. What's the point of it all?
This is pretty straightforward, but what's the business goal? I usually see in the award-winning campaigns that you have a business goal and you have a communications goal that supports the business goal. And that's perfectly fine to have those two objectives because they're going to be different. But you've got to explain what is the business impact that you're trying to affect, and then show how does the research support it, how did the tactics support it, and then how did the results come back and address the business problem. So this, if you're in an agency environment, this can be tricky because sometimes you don't know exactly what the business drivers are other than maybe more anecdotally from your client. You're going to have to really drill down on this. And you may not have done it beforehand. It's perfectly acceptable to go back after the fact and ask questions. So explain to me what we were trying to accomplish, and did we drive traffic to the website, or did we sell more stuff as a result of this? It's perfectly acceptable to do that retroactively. You don't have to have that done beforehand.
Hi, I'm Christine Conley, and I'm seeking opportunities. The comms goal. Here's where you show us how comms played a role. What were you going for? What was the goal?
So this just addresses the point that you have a business goal and a communications goal. I think we already sort of covered this, so I won't go into more detail.
Hi, I'm Merritt Montanari with Jackson Spalding. Numbers count. Try using numbers to quantify stuff so we can decide if your work did enough.
Okay, this is an important point. So a lot of times you'll see an objective will be to increase share of voice, for example. And then at the end, but there's no number about how much you want to increase it. It just says increase share of voice. And then at the end, it says we increased share of voice by 14%, and that's really awesome. Well, I have no context to know if that's awesome. Could you maybe have increased it by 25%? Could you have increased it by more? So it's important in those communications objectives that you actually put some quantifiable numbers. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I didn't really have a quantifiable number when I started this program. But you know intuitively kind of what you're trying to accomplish. Because you got to know when to stop. At some point, you make a decision to stop. So what was that threshold that made you stop working on that campaign? Was it, yeah, it could be budget, but what made you feel proud to go back to your supervisor or to your client and say, we accomplished this, and what is making you say that this is a good outcome for them? Whatever that number is, if it's 14% and you think that that's really super fantastic, then you might have, in your mind, thought about a 10% increase was going to be okay. So put that 10% at the front. It doesn't have to be written down, articulated somewhere in a document to show me. Just tell me what you thought, roughly speaking, would have been a good objective for you, and tell me that up front so we can compare the results at the end.
I'm Pam Hughes with SPM Communications. You know success. You say that you started without a clear goal, but you know success way deep down in your soul.
This is what I just said, basically. So I'm going to pass it to Tim. So now we're talking about the approach. So you've got the situation up front where you do the little summary where you brag about how awesome you are. Then you have the goals, and we covered all of that. Now we're talking about what approach you took, or sometimes strategies, or it's labeled different things. But this is basically, what did you go do?
Hi, Tim Lecker from Weber Shandwick. Your approach, the strategy gives us the lay of the land, how your team tackled the problem at hand.
Does everybody know the difference between a strategy and a tactic? Basically, strategies are buckets of tactics. So this is where you tell us what are your buckets of tactics, and this needs to tie back to that research. So if your research said that people weren't buying this product because they didn't know about it, So your approach is to help people know more about it, which is an education program. Make sure that it's tying back to that research.
I am Ashton Brown with 3-Box Strategic Communications. Connect the dots. Please help us follow your team's train of thought from research to program, from dot to dot.
So this is kind of what I was just saying. Connect it all along the way. And don't think that we're smart enough to figure it out. Because some of us are, some of us aren't. But the reality is, after you've read through 50 of these things, you're not going to take the time to process through. The other thing that I'll point out, and I think this comes up a little bit later, but a lot of people spend a ton of time on that supporting documentation, which is great. But the most important thing is that 2-page summary usually, or the brief summary. That's where people get the bulk of their information. Judges are just like every other human. Asking them to click on something or asking them to pick up a binder and flip through something is relying on them to take an action that a lot of people are too lazy to do. So if you can get it into that summary, you're going to improve your odds. So now we're talking about, so we talked about the buckets of tactics, now we're going to talk about tactics.
I'm Caroline DeChocho with Weber. Spell it out. Your work should be clear with a step-by-step guide that shows us your tactics, the things that you tried.
Bullets, lists, make it easy. Do not make me read through paragraphs. I'm not going to find it all. I may not read it all, honestly. When you're trying to crank through 50 of these and get to a consensus, and all of your fellow judges are staring at you because they have a plane to catch and you're still reading through stuff, it puts a lot of pressure on the judges. So make it easy for them to see everything, step 1, step 2, step 3. Label them step 1, step 2, step 3. Even if they weren't that way in your program, this is not about what your plan said. This is about how you merchandise your program back.
Jennifer Cho, Weber Shandwick. What's special? What's special something, what excellent feat made your work fancy, spectacular, neat?
So we see a lot of really, really good programs. The great thing about being on an awards panel is that you get to see some really fantastic work. But does it rise to the level of an award winner? If a client is happy, that doesn't necessarily make it an award winner. If you exceeded your goals, that doesn't necessarily make it an award winner. So think about what made it special. Did you take a unique approach? What's unusual about it, and what makes it that, what's going to bump it up above a great program to an award-winning program? I can't tell you the number of conversations I've been in with other judges where we've said, this was a really great program. I loved it. It was so on point. It was very thoughtful. I'm sure the client was extremely happy, but it's not really anything unique. So think about how you can talk about your campaigns through that lens, and it might also sort of help you guide your decision on which ones you want to enter.
Janine Brew, Verizon, creative with purpose. It's got to be clever, but also be smart. Without a clear purpose, then why even start?
This is, don't just be creative for creative's sake. Make sure it ties back to the research, ties back to the objectives. Sometimes people will talk about a super creative thing that they did that's an interesting part of the campaign, but then it doesn't really talk about how that helped them exceed their goals. So they sort of don't tie it into the other stuff. It probably did have a strategic tie, but if I can't see it simply, then it's probably going to get missed by judges. So make sure it's tied back to something that's not just creative for creative's sake. I think the days are gone, frankly, of when clients paid for creative's sake anyway. So I don't know if this is a big issue, but just be thoughtful about how it works with your program. All right, now we're on to results. So we've talked about the summary, we've talked about the objectives, the strategies, which are the buckets of tactics, then the tactics. Now we're going to talk about the results. A lot of times we see people, one thing I would point out, so everybody always thinks the results are what matter. That's the most important thing. I'm going to put all my time talking about the results. That's great, and results are certainly important, but But if you look at the rubric for how judges are asked to score awards, a lot of times they're all the different sections are equally weighted. So make sure you put as much thought and effort into all the upfront stuff as you do to the results. All right, so who's got the mic? There we go.
Kristen Cole, A. Larry Ross Communications. Remind us, restart the story, then let us all know. How did you do it, and how did it go?
So I told you that judges are lazy or just busy or crushed for time or whatever. Asking us to go back to the front page to look at what your goals were, don't assume that that's necessarily going to happen. So if you can put, the goal was a 10% increase in share of voice and the results were a 14% increase, that helps me look real simply at it exceeded its goals, it met its goals, whatever. So just put it back in there so that I don't have to look around for stuff. If you make me dig, that's where I'm going to find problems because you're relying on the judges to put in the effort, and not all of them will do that. Okay? Where'd the mic go? Is it back there? Oh, are you making me do it now? All right, I'll do it. All right, so did it work? Did you win? Did you grow? Did you avoid a fight? Did you share things or sell things or bring things to light? So then tie it back to the business purpose. Sometimes no news is the best result. So make sure that you explain it to the judges so they understand why that's important. Or, you might show, if you have a client that's experiencing a crisis, for example, and their partner is involved, if you want to try and keep your client out of it, show me some of the partner bad news and explain that your client was not in it or your company was not in it. That's as important in some cases as having a really spectacular event that drove a bunch of eyeballs or visibility. So other tips, package it. Your work should look pretty, your work should look nice, some boxes, some bullets, some color for spice. 50 awards, people, 50 awards. What's going to make yours stand out? This is like resume building in a lot of ways. What's going to make yours stand out and what's going to make me pay attention to it? Sadly, sometimes the presentation really matters. And some of the awards that are less flashy might have really good content in them, but if you're looking at side by side, the one with good content in it and an award that performed just as well that's a little bit flashier, it's probably going to get a little bit more consideration. So think about packaging. Here's some examples. I'm not talking about, some of us have creative teams, which is great, and that's a wonderful luxury to have. Some of us have very creative interns who know how to use tools that I'm not even sure what they are. Remember, I'm old. But I'm just talking about putting some headers in there and putting a little bit of color in there. This is not an extensive amount of work to do this, but it makes it a whole lot easier for judges. And it makes me be able to sort of it gives me benchmarks to see where I need to look. So it doesn't have to be that pretty. Simplify. If it's easily read, then it's easily learned. Even difficult critics can be overturned. Cut out. Give it to somebody to look at it, cut out some more, cut out some more, cut out some more. Filling up 2 pages should not be the goal. It's telling your story. Or organizing it in a way that it looks a little less cumbersome. I mean, to me, this is really, I love the column approach. It seems to break it up for readers. It makes it a lot easier when you're looking at just pages and pages and pages of text. This really helps. Sometimes you'll see photos embedded in there too, which looks really nice, which takes me to this one. I'm my own straight man. Sometimes the best choice may be put in a pic. When words don't quite work, a pic fixes it quick. So you can see they've dumped in some photos. They did a little outtake up here. This group went way above and really made it beautiful. That's a great case study. I mean, if you are in a business where you need case studies, you can use some of these for case studies. I would shorten it a little bit for a case study, but you can see that there's very easy guideposts for the judges to see what they should be reading, and this sort of brings it to life so you automatically know kind of what the topic is versus just seeing text after text after text. Write well. Please use a good writer to wipe out the B's. Please use active language. I'm begging you, please. Just write well, people, seriously. I know that a lot of times we're all busy and we tend to sort of ask our most junior people to compile these awards. If you're going to do that, just don't enter them, because you're wasting your money in some cases, because unfortunately the junior people may not have the full context of the program. And so they're not going to understand the full strategy. And you want to make sure that you find one of your most powerful writers to help you do this. There are a lot of really great programs that were poorly written that are very difficult to get through. And I've been on panels where judges are really picky about it. And if you have typos in there, they mark off for it. I don't do that personally, but I have been on panels where people do that. So make sure that you're paying attention to all those details. When I say get rid of the B's, I'm talking about active language. So this is like back to grammar school, I apologize. But if you can fix this for award entries, it'll help you fix it in your work and it'll make you a better PR practitioner. If you have these words in your document, you're using a passive voice. So find out, just do a search for these words and try and get them out of there. It'll also save space. Bore us not. Leave it out, less is more. Avoid being a bore. Please do not be a snorer or we'll head for the door. We will lose, you'll lose us. So if you only can fill up this much, great. I can't tell you how exhilarating it is to get this as a judge and go, oh my gosh, there's white space on there. So don't feel like you have to fill up all the page. We're not looking for that. You could put photos in there if you wanted to, but you don't even have to. White space is fine. Check the rubric. You're wrapping it up and your work sure looks good. Now you should check that you've done all you should. So this is the point that I was making about a lot of people spend a ton of time on the results, which is great. But if the results are as equally important as every other section, which in this case they are, this is for the Pegasus Awards, this is from 2018, then you can see that you really need to spend equal time in all sections. So if you did not have a robust research rationale when you built your program, but you kind of knew intuitively why you were doing it, or there were conversations or whatever, you're going to need to take some time to build that out, because you're leaving 10 points on the board if you don't have a good research section. Same thing for all the other sections.
Jody, on the scoring, do the judges generally adhere to that pretty closely, or is there a little flex on those based on personalities of the people?
No, I mean, it's amazing to me. I've been on international panels, I've been on domestic panels, people from all different backgrounds, from all different countries. It surprises me every single time how similar our judging is in terms. Now, granted, I might give it a bunch of 8s and 7s, and somebody else might give it a bunch of 4s and 3s, but when you look at comparatively to what else they're judging, they still rank the same. So it's less about what number they choose and just more about how it compares with the other ones, and it's remarkable to me how similar everybody sees these entries. But that's a really great question. Sometimes they will tell you, for example, in this one, they actually give some instructions to the judges. 4 to 7 is fully competent. Those are those awards where we go, hey, you know what? The client must be super happy. That's an awesome program. The score of 8 to 10 is the winning categories because it's something extraordinary, or they did something unusual or made it really spectacular in some way. So, and also it shows a balanced criteria. You're not probably if you have 10s in all the categories and a 2 in one. So it has to be balanced. And then if you look at this rubric, this is for, I think this is for Sabres maybe? Oh, IABC. So you'll see that provide some here. All marks start at a 4, so they've told judges they can't go below a 4. Whatever. It doesn't matter, really. And then they sort of tell you kind of what the score has to be for an award level. So you can get an award of excellence, or you can get like an honorable mention, which is great. We see a lot of honorable mentions, but that's not what you want. You want to win it. So what's that special something that's going to move you out of the honorable mention category to the winning category? And this is for sabers and silver anvil. So the silver anvil and the bronze anvil, does everybody understand what the difference is? Like silver anvil is more like the full campaign, and bronze anvil is more just like tactics, like a news story that you place or something, or a website you built. The nice thing is the Pegasus Award actually follows some of the same criteria. So if you prepare for the Pegasus Award, you've got a nice entry starting point for silver anvil and bronze anvil. So that makes that's I think one of the best rationales for testing your program locally. And if it doesn't perform locally, you can think about, how do I need to retool this to help it perform better before it goes to the national level? So it's actually a really nice test bed for you. And then Sabre Awards are a little different. So PR Week, I have not been on the PR Week panel. Have you been on the PR Week panel, Jan? Yeah, so what I know about the PR Week panel is they really put a ton of emphasis on the creative. So that might be weighted a little bit more heavily toward creative than some of the other ones, where the other ones are a little bit more balanced. I will say for the Sabre Awards, the rubric is really fluid in that case. So it's usually a panel of a lot of very seasoned people that get together with Paul Holmes, and they talk about all the different programs. And I think that there's a pretty concerted effort, whereas some of the award programs you'll see a single campaign that was really exceptional perform and win in multiple categories. You see less of that in the Sabre Awards, where it's a little bit more balanced across the industry. So they really look at what are they trying to accomplish in each one of the categories, and was the entry specific to that category. So you see a little bit less of that for Sabres. And then bring it home. And for heaven's sake, there's a point here to make. Connect all the dots. There's a trophy at stake. So make sure the thread goes all the way through. You did research that told you that you should use an approach. You used that approach, which led to these tactics. Those tactics resulted in what, and how did that tie back to solve the bigger problem? Seems pretty simple, but when you start writing the award entries, you sometimes lose sight of that. So even if you have to build an outline beforehand and then say, is it all connecting, and have somebody look at it before you start writing it, connect the dots is the most important thing that you can learn from this program. If you do that, it will make your award entries so much stronger. And then this is sort of the same thing. Make sure you bring it home. All of it all connects. And then here are your communications results, so report those. And then if you can extrapolate a business impact, tell us what that is. Now you know. That's all there is. There's no more than that. I'll answer your questions. Let's have a quick chat. That's it. Any questions? Yes.
Can you describe some of the words that have stuck out in your mind that went on to win?
Oh my gosh. So the question is, for the purposes of the video, are there some award entries that stood out in my mind? I do a ton of award judging, and I do it for PRSA also, and so it's hard. They kind of blur together. But I will say that a theme that I see that works well are the ones that are more well-written and visually appealing tend to perform better because it makes us laugh, it makes us smile, it makes us think, oh my gosh, that's so clever. And if it's well-written, we have a tendency to retain it better and then talk about it as a group in the judging circles. And it's interesting to the point earlier about, is there any flex in the judging? I've been on panels where we don't ever talk to the other judges. And if you look at my top 3, and people across the country are in their office looking at them and their top 3, it's amazing to me how they sync up. So a lot of that stuff that I'm telling you that works well seems to work well for other judges in other parts of the country and other parts of the world too. I do know that there's a movement in the award business toward video production and providing your case study in video format. That's huge in con. I think PR Week is kind of moving that way. I know less about that. I will tell you that when I was on the con program, that's a blind test, so you don't really know who the agency is or who the client is. You just see the program, and it's so you don't know if it's an ad agency that submitted it or a PR agency. I'll tell you that our ad agency friends have quite a leg up on us in terms of telling their story in a 2-minute video format. They're designed to build short ads that run on video. That's what they've been doing for their entire existence. They do a really, really good job. And if you're going to enter a program that has video entries, humor seems to work really well, and heartstrings, the same kind of thing that you would like if you were a consumer. Any other questions? I think I was pretty thorough, I hope. Oh, you? All right, you're good? Thank you to everybody for group participation. This was a fun little experiment, and I enjoyed hearing everybody read it. Doing their Dr. Seuss. I hope I don't get sued by Dr. Seuss. But thank you. I think everybody should give themselves a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Jody. I am Kristen Cole. I am on the Awards and Honors Committee, and our committee is the one who helped put this together today. We actually did this last year, or PRSA did it last year, and I actually am a testament to everything Jody said. I actually came to her presentation last year. When I got ready, my firm is a boutique firm. We had never entered any awards. We were not sure if we could compete against other larger firms, and if our programs and our projects were award-winning. But I went back to Jody's presentation. I did everything she said, literally, and we entered. And so that winning submission, and I tweaked it for about 15-30 minutes, and I entered it in the bronze ambles, and we won an award of commendation. So very first time entering, did everything she said. So I'm a testament to say, use this because it will be very, very valuable to you. I've also judged, and I can talk about that as well. She's spot on, so thank you so much. Obviously, we are just right around the corner. We're going to be opening the Pegasus Awards submissions. They open on August 1st, and the submission deadline is August 30th. So we will be emailing you the official submission packet in the next week so that you can start looking that over. Our committee this year has really taken a look at the silver anvils and the bronze anvils so that we can match them up as closely as possible, because we do want this to be not only an honor or an opportunity for you to get honored here in the DFW area, but for you to use that and get honored on the national level too. So know that we understand that. We want you to take the feedback you learn and use it and continue to get awards with that. We also, the submissions are open to both members and non-members. So whether you're a member or not to PRSA, you can submit. As just a couple of tips and tricks for those of you who are here today, consider entering categories that are not media relations. That's our largest category. So if you have a media relations program and project, and that's how we do ours, we've got programs and we've got projects. Again, they align with the silver anvils and the bronze anvils. But if you have something other than media relations, consider entering. Those categories are much smaller, so your opportunity to win might be much greater. Also, you are welcome to enter more than one category. So go for it. Have fun. The Pegasus Awards, even if you don't decide to enter this year, we do hope you'll join us at our awards banquet, or our event, I should say. It's not even a banquet, because we are looking to really do things different this year. It's going to be on November 7th. It's going to be a celebration. We're looking at fun venues. We're looking at fun times of days, and we're just going to celebrate in style. So whether you enter an award, it's always fun to see who did win, kind of learn from them of what is an award-winning category and award-winning campaign. So come and join us. Put that on your calendar, November 7th.